haven't said this many times at all this season, but that was a pretty shocking performance from Liverpool, wasn't it? Going down to a 1-0 defeat to Plymouth Argyle in the FA Cup, which of course means they crash out. And really, when you look at the balance of the game, you'd have to say that it was a pretty deserved defeat for Liverpool and a deserved win for Plymouth. Obviously, Liverpool make 9 changes coming into this, as we expected, and some of the consequences of that often is that you do look a little bit disjointed in possession, but it was quite stark really how bad Liverpool were in terms of being able to progress the ball, create chances. They just struggled all afternoon with that aspect, and also out of possession, bullied at times, and Plymouth, for a side that's bottom of the Championship, you'd think that they would kind of be made to be backs to the wall throughout this game and that find it really difficult, but they were largely comfortable for a lot of the game. And what you kind of got really was it was an even match, really decided by a big moment in a penalty that Plymouth obviously dispatched. I mean, the statistics kind of bear that out. 1.23 expected goals for Plymouth, 1 for Liverpool, 10 shots for Plymouth, 14 for Liverpool, 2 shots on target for Plymouth and 4 for Liverpool. And Plymouth took their big moment, didn't they? They dispatched that penalty, and you just can't really have any complaints that the big moment in the game went their way. You certainly can't have any complaints about the penalty. It absolutely was. But I mean, in terms of the general, the fact that Liverpool have gone out of the cup, they can't complain about that, because you can't play the way that Liverpool did and feel hard done by. Maybe the game, it was, as I say, an even game, could have gone either way. But you've got to be better than that. You've got, certainly if you're the side that's top of the Premier League going away to a side who are really struggling in the Championship, you've got to show a lot more and you've got to play a lot better, and you can't be coming away feeling that you've had hard lines there or been unlucky at all, because they haven't. They just did not play well enough to feel that they kind of merited anything more out of the game. And I think there was a few issues that kind of kept rearing their head throughout the game. I thought Liverpool had a young and lightweight midfield that went against them, against a physical Plymouth side who, as I say, kind of bullied Liverpool. And then, so that meant Liverpool had real problems in terms of progressing the ball and getting into good areas where you could threaten Plymouth. So that was an issue all throughout the game. But then, even when they did get the ball in the final third, it felt like every forward was chasing the touch around. Now, the pitch wasn't the best, and I think that is worth mentioning. Obviously, it's the same for both sides, although Liverpool are trying to keep the ball on the deck a little bit more. But it was just shocking, really, to see how much they struggled to cope with that, Liverpool. Yes, sometimes, they are used to playing on these absolute carpets in the Premier League, aren't they? But after, half an hour or so, players of this quality should be able to cope with a bobbly pitch and get the ball under control and get it moving. But it just all day, it kept sort of, the balls were coming off the shins, they weren't trapping it, or they were, passes were overhit. They just really, really struggled to get going. And as I say, if you do that and you don't create anything against the side that's got the worst defensive record in the Championship, then you can't come away feeling that you've had any hard luck or anything like that. It just wasn't a good enough performance, and really kind of a bad day all round. And in fact, talking about the struggles they had in attack in particular, 0.44 open play expected goals created by Liverpool, which is the lowest under Arne Slot. So that really gives you a quite good snapshot, really, of how bad a performance it was from Liverpool. And as I say, I've not said that very often at all this season under Arne Slot, but it was really, really stark to see that today, just how poor Liverpool were. Now, in terms of the points, I usually go deeper into individual performances here, but I just want to pick out a couple of points and go deeper into maybe one individual performance, just because this is so unusual. We're talking about a defeat. And the first point I want to kind of examine really is the fact that I don't think Arne Slot, although nobody likes losing, do they? Liverpool managers don't like losing. They certainly don't pick teams to go out there and lose. But I still don't get the impression he's going to lose a massive amount of sleep over this one, because look at it, coming into this game, you could see it from the squad that he takes down there. He has made a decision here, not just in terms of the team he selected, which we all expected. We expected probably 9 changes, 10 changes. We knew he was going to rotate heavily. But in terms of the squad, he made some big calls, didn't he? Look at the players who got left behind, the likes of Virgil van Dijk, Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo. You didn't have these as a break glass option if the game wasn't going your way. And it wasn't just that as well. He picked his squad, but he still had some big hitters on the bench. But I think it's very, very kind of noticeable that in a game where Liverpool struggled for control in midfield, he didn't turn to Curtis Jones at any point. He would have been someone who would have brought some control, a bit of bite in that central area that Liverpool was so lacking. and yet Slot didn't. As I say, the squad decisions, the selections, the substitutions, these are all decisions that Arne Slot is making, and I think they tell you an awful lot about how he viewed this game in terms of its level importance for Liverpool's season. Because look, he's looked at the fixtures that came before this, he's looked at the fixtures that are coming after for Liverpool, and figured, look, this is a game where I'm going to have to take a gamble. I'm going to have a very young bench. I'm going to have kids all over the team. I'm going to be using fringe players. It's going to be a very disjointed selection, and probably the performance is going to suffer. So he has taken that gamble, and he's happily done it. And I think you've got to kind of back him in that decision. You know, when he takes that gamble and he makes that selection and he leaves all his big hitters at home, he's saying, look, if this doesn't work out for us and we do get knocked out the FA Cup, it isn't the worst thing in the world. You know, there are maybe some benefits. We know, Liverpool, anyone who's followed Liverpool in recent years will know how hard it is to go on four fronts, and the luck you maybe need in terms of injuries, the strain it puts on the squad across the season, losing players and starters, but also maybe the following season as well. You maybe feel a bit of the pain of that if you go deep in all competitions. And so I think he's looked at it and said, look, I don't want to lose this game, but if I'm gonna gamble, I'm gonna put this team out there and let the chips fall where they may. Kind of that has been the approach, really. And obviously it's not gone for him this time around, and Liverpool have suffered that defeat. But as I say, he'll have known coming into this that his selection he's be taking a risk there, and he's going to have to see how it plays out. And so I imagine he's much more accepting of it than we would maybe imagine. And also beyond that, now he will be looking for the benefits of losing this game, and it is easy to see what they are, because as much as he would have loved to win, this would have been 4 extra games if Liverpool got to the FA Cup final, tacked onto the season somewhere. You've got to fit all that in amongst the Premier League, the Champions League they're competing in. They're already, of course, in the League Cup final as well. And particularly just this month alone as well, if Liverpool had added an extra FA Cup fixture, which would have been coming up at the end of February, they've got to fit that in somewhere, and they've already got an unbelievably busy schedule, haven't they? Because they've squeezed in the Everton game, the rescheduled Everton game. They've squeezed in a rescheduled game against Villa, and obviously they've got some really tough fixtures this month anyway. Manchester City away, they've got to go there. They've got Newcastle at home, so some really, really tricky fixtures coming up for Liverpool. So I think that is going to kind of be the focus for Slot, and I think you could see that in the fact that the squad he took, the fact that he doesn't bring Curtis Jones on. I think he will be focusing on the upsides really of Liverpool not going through today. And managers have got to make these calls, these big decisions, haven't they? And he made one today, and as I say, now he'll be picking up the pieces after that. He'll be focusing on the fact that it's a defeat, and I'm sure he won't have enjoyed it, but he now will be looking for the upsides. And I think there are several really for Liverpool not pushing on 4 fronts, because let's have it right, if Liverpool can now give all their attention to going throwing themselves into that League Cup final and hopefully winning it, and then of course giving everything they've got to go deep in the Champions League and hopefully finish the job off in the Premier League, then I'm pretty sure everyone would say that is a pretty good season for Liverpool. So it's not a disaster, and I'm pretty sure that the manager will feel that way too. Now, another point I kind of want to focus on along those lines, although it's not a disaster for the manager, it's probably not a disaster for the squad as a whole and their fitness. I do think this is kind of bad news that Liverpool have gone out of this competition for several of the players who were on the fringes of that squad. I mean, you look at some of the players who started today: Federico Chiesa, Harvey Elliott, Wataru Endo. They've been coming in the early League Cup rounds, the early FA Cup rounds, haven't they? And you just wonder now, where are their minutes going to come from over the remainder of the season? It's very, every time one of these domestic cup games came around, or one of the Champions League dead rubbish, you could see where they were going to get starts, you could see where they were going to get minutes to keep them involved. Those have all gone now. None of these players are going to start in the League Cup final, are they? It's going to be the strongest possible team. Obviously, there are no FA Cup games, and there aren't going to be any more Champions League dead rubbers coming up unless Liverpool miraculously pull out a 10-0 win in the first leg of the round of 16 tie. So it's really, really difficult to see where those players get their minutes. And the job for them, I guess, now is to kind of try and force the manager's hand and force their way into the Premier League team, force themselves to be considered to be used off the bench in the Premier League or the Champions League. That has got to be the aim for them. But it is, as I say, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. How do you keep a Chiesa sharp if he's not going to be involved? He's not going to get any 90s anywhere. How do you keep an Endo engaged if he's only getting 5 minutes at the end of a game? Harvey Elliott, how much will we see of him between now and the end of the season? It's a really, really difficult one, I think, for the manager to manage. And it's one of the kind of costs of having a huge squad squad and then not using it to its full extent by not going all the way in all 4 competitions. So that is a tough one, I think, one to kind of keep an eye on. These players have now, their big job is to, how much of an impact can I make as a substitute? Can I get the odd start when the fixtures get a little bit heavy? We'll have to see how they do in terms of that. And I don't, as I say, I usually do individual performances, don't I? But there weren't a lot to kind of focus on, really. I felt today it was just not a very good day at the office at all. But there is one performance I do want to hone in on. And I don't try not to be too negative about this, but I think it was a poor performance. I'm talking about Diogo Jota. Now, he finds himself in a kind of weird position at the moment. I'm talking about fringe players there, and he's very much at the moment kind of one of those, you'd have to say. He's had a really disrupted season with fitness issues, hasn't he? And you would have said at the start of the season, if he had been fit, he's going to be Liverpool's starting number 9. But I think he's got himself in a position because of those injuries and then coming in and maybe not looking at his absolute best, where he's struggling to make the case that he is Liverpool's starting 9. I mean, at the end of the day, if he was, he wouldn't have been starting this game today. And I think in terms of trying to push himself back into that position and make himself Liverpool's starting centre-forward, he did not do himself any favours whatsoever today with his performance. I mean, for a player who gets a lot of shots generally, he only gets one today, one shot right at the end. It's a really good save, but that shows you how ineffective Jota was. 0 chances created as well. Seemingly was, talking about players chasing the first touch around, he was maybe the worst for it really in today's game. Really couldn't kind of get the ball out from under his feet. He was struggling. 39% passing accuracy. I mean, that is ludicrously low and, very, very low for him. And he's not, very high volume with the ball and one of those who likes to take it. He does try things. He tries to dribble through a lot, and so he does lose the ball often, but that is incredibly low even for a player like him. And I've criticised Núñez for that aspect of his game in the past, so you've got to highlight when Jota is certainly not living up to the levels that the manager will want in terms of that. He wins 6 out of 18 duels as well, so again, every 50-50 he was involved in just wasn't going in his favour. So I just think it's an interesting one, a really bad day for him in terms of his performance, and I think he's got work to do, hasn't he, really, Diogo Jota, if he is to kind of kick on and push himself back into the starting lineup as that starting centre-forward, because it's not just that Luis Diaz is clearly the first choice there at the moment, and it's generally played well when he's been used there. It's that we've seen a little bit more from Darwin Núñez recently in terms of his use of the ball. His pressing has improved. I've spoken about how he's been coming on leaps and bounds this season, and particularly in the last few weeks as well. I feel like he's playing really well, so that has given Jota a bit of a job to do, and I think games like today and performances like today won't do him any favours in terms of working himself back into that starting lineup. Now, I'm going to wrap it up there. I don't want to focus too much on this defeat because, as I say, I think there are upsides for Liverpool, and I think so many good things coming up for them, isn't there? So many, the League Cup final to look forward to. They're in an incredible position in the Premier League. Same in the Champions League. Got that round of 16 tie to look forward to. So, come the end of the season, we could just look at this as a kind of small blip. But the job that Liverpool have to do is, of course, to get themselves over the line in those trophies, and then no one will be too worried about the fact that they didn't go on and lift the FA Cup. So let me know in the comments what you think about that. How could this be a bit of a blessing in disguise, or are you disappointed that Liverpool won't be going further in the FA Cup? Do let me know what you think, and of course, if you can like and subscribe, always massively appreciated. And of course, there's that big game coming up on Wednesday, isn't there? The Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. What a great opportunity for Liverpool to get this immediately out of the system. And of course, it's not just a derby win and bragging rights that's at stake, but Liverpool could have a 9-point lead in the Premier League title race if they go and win that game. So it's absolutely humongous, and I think it'll be if Liverpool can get a win there, I think everyone will be feeling much better about what they've seen today. So all the build up to come to that, very much looking forward to it. So see you guys very soon.